Today on the Big 3 in 30 NFL, Dexter Lawrence demands a trade from the Giants.
So, Dexter's not happy.
Fernando Mendoza visits the Raiders.
And let Fernando be a sponge.
And Lamar Jackson arrives at Ravens workouts.
Lamar Jackson's arrival at the Ravens facility.
This is the Big 3 in 30 NFL, the three biggest stories in the NFL from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The Big 3 in 30 NFL starts now. Thank you for making the Big 3 in 30 your first listen of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. The Giants have a major issue on their hands after Dexter Lawrence reportedly demanded a trade, putting one of their cornerstone players in the spotlight of the NFL. Here's Patricia Traina from Locked On Giants with more.
So, Dexter's not happy. And if I'm being totally honest with you, last year, you could see the frustration on Dexter's face. The personality was so different for Dexter Lawrence. Dexter's always been very kind of happy-go-lucky, jovial type. You know, you could go up to him, you could joke with him and, you know, share a laugh and whatnot. And the season last year, which was a rough one for Dexter, both personally, you know, in terms of his own performance and just with the team losing, it took its toll on him. And I think, you know, between the losing, between Dexter not being fully healthy, between, you know, the very slow start he got off to because he came into camp, I had heard, overweight and out of shape. I think, you know, the whole thing with Carl Banks calling him out, which, you know, is Carl's opinion. He's entitled to do that. I think all of that ate away at Dexter. That and plus, you know, being a captain and people's questioning, hey, you know, why aren't you talking to Abdul Carter when Abdul Carter was, you know, not pulling his weight and doing what he was supposed to be. So that, and then you also throw in the fact that every time Dexter Lawrence was taken off the field, the team just, it was obvious. You could see that he was missing. It was like a black hole almost in terms of that defensive front. And then it got to the point where, were they pushing him to go out there or were they pulling him back or what exactly were they doing? So all of that added up to frustration for Dexter Lawrence. And at the end of last year, during Baggy Day, Dexter didn't talk to the media. But before that, Dexter had spoken to the media. You could tell the man was frustrated. All right, now we learned that to add to those frustrations, he was trying to get some guaranteed money and some financial security on his contract, which, as I've said before on the show, even though Dexter has 2 more years left on the 4-year extension he signed, he has no more guaranteed money. So if you've watched every day, you know that I have said that Dexter's contract is one that the Giants can redo, give him a little bit more money, give him, you know, the guaranteed money, throw in a voidable year if you have to, and you can lower his cap hit for this year and open up a whole bunch of cap space to get you through the season. That has not happened. Now, I can only guess what is going on from the Giants' perspective. I don't know this for a fact, but I'm going to take a guess here, an educated guess. The Giants don't want to do a full-fledged renewal because they feel, okay, you know what? You got 2 years left. Let me see you bounce back from last year's off year, which, by the way, as I will get to a little later on in the show, even though some of the numbers were bad, it wasn't quite as bad as maybe we all think it was. So who knows? Maybe the Giants are like, okay, you know what, Dexter? You get back to being the guy that we saw in 2024 before the elbow injury, then we'll talk turkey. To which Dexter is probably saying, I am the same guy. You know, I was hurt. I was this, that, and the other thing. You know, where's the love and the loyalty? I went out there. I busted my butt for you. And where's the loyalty? So I wouldn't be surprised if that's where the stalemate has come up. Now, there was also a report that the Giants were approached last year by teams looking to trade for Dexter Lawrence. And Joe Shane was like, nope, not having it. which, you kind of expected at the time. Dexter, was in a down year, but he wasn't horrible. It wasn't like he went right off the cliff. So all of that. And then you look at, maybe Dexter being out in Seattle cheering on Leonard Williams, his old running mate, and watching him go all the way to a Super Bowl. And you just wonder if all of that kind of came together in a perfect storm to where now Dexter is just not feeling it with the Giants. Even though, John Harbaugh has infused all kinds of energy and optimism, whatnot, Dexter's probably just not feeling it. He's been with the team since 2019. This one of two guys, Darius Slayton being the other, who have been with the team the longest. All right, so we have this whole situation now where everything's kind of working against Dexter Lawrence. That's probably why he wants out. It's like, if you're not going to give me financial security, which, again, who can blame him? Guy goes out there and, he wasn't himself last year, but again, part of that was his doing. Part of it was the previous coaching staff's doing, right? You might recall that I spoke about how I didn't understand why during training camp Dexter Lawrence's reps were limited, right? You saw him in the one-on-one drills. You saw him in the 7-on-7s. You didn't really see him a whole lot in the 11-on-11s. I questioned why that was. I'm like, why are they still babying him? Especially when at the Pro Bowl games, months before, he was partaking in tug of war, which to me told me that elbow maybe wasn't as bad of a problem as maybe the Giants thought it was. And then, you go through the season and you see that, Dexter's just not, the stamina's lacking a little bit. And he got better. Let's give him credit where it's due. He did get better as the year went on. But you just wonder about the whole handling of his situation and if that just kind of contributed to the perfect storm that he went through, which I think it did, by the way. So you have a frustrated Dexter Lawrence on your hands. But you know what, folks? You still have a pretty good player, despite the fact that his numbers last year went downhill. I had to laugh because, Andre Patterson, now the former defensive line coach, stood in front of the media when people questioned him about why Dexter's numbers had fallen off a cliff. And he says, oh, it's hard for, a guy to, an interior guy to do that, year in and year out. It's really not if you're healthy and you've got everything together. I don't buy that argument. I never did. You hear, you heard Patterson say, oh, Dexter's still drawing the double teams. Okay, yeah, he was. And I get that. Double teams are not easy to beat, but Dexter wasn't even beating the single teams on a regular basis. So you just kind of knew, your eyes were telling you that something wasn't right, whether it was stamina, whether it was the elbow, whatever the case may be. And, Dexter now has an opportunity that hopefully he's in tip-top shape, rejuvenated, and ready to go. It's just a question of where is he going to go? All right, Giant fans, coming up next, I asked my Locked On colleagues to make me an offer for Dexter Lawrence.
Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed sponsored jobs help you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for. Skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed. That's according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all the boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves. It's over at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support your show by saying you heard about Indeed right here. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Welcome back to the Big 3 and 30 NFL. The Raiders continue doing homework for the NFL draft, with Fernando Mendoza visiting Las Vegas as the draft gets closer. Here's your boy Q from Locked On Raiders with the latest.
We'll go ahead and jump right into it. And off top, I talked about it on Monday's show that the Kirk Cousins deal was not signed, sealed, and delivered. And I said I'm just waiting to get that email from the Raiders. I'm waiting to see that social media post that says, yes, in fact, he is signed to the Silver and Black. And that happened. That happened on Monday afternoon, as a matter of fact. Following my radio show, it didn't take too long after that. All of a sudden, the news came through. The email came through. Kirk Cousins is now a member of the Raiders. The Raiders put out the statement. He enters his 15th season in the league, joining the Raiders after spending the past 2 seasons with the Falcons. Originally entered the league as a 4th-round pick by Washington back in 2012 draft and spent 6 years with that team before signing with Minnesota for 6 seasons. So it goes on to talk about Kirk Cousins, but we all in all know Kirk Cousins, his career, what he's been able to do, what he hasn't been able to do, and the fact that he's going to be that veteran quarterback that'll lead the way for Fernando Mendoza, whether that's right away, starting off the season as a starting quarterback, or even just pushing Fernando Mendoza in training camp. There's also another element of it that I didn't think about until I heard from Kirk Morrison on my radio show on Monday about what else Kirk Cousins is going to do for Fernando Mendoza without ever really telling him a thing or saying, hey, this is how you do it. This is what Kirk had to say about what he did when he first entered the NFL and what Fernando Mendoza is going to be able to have to do and have an opportunity to do with Kirk Cousins now as that veteran quarterback.
I'm excited to see him go out and be the guy that shows Fernando what it means to be a quarterback in the NFL. And it's not just, hey, Rook, come follow me and show. No, just go through your routines and let Fernando be a sponge. That's what I did, Q. I wanted to see, how do you go about your 1st and 10 during the early parts of the week, your 3rd down preparation? I want to know, when do you go see the chiropractor, right? I had no idea coming out of college that Friday, chiropractors there after practice, massage therapists there right after practice, right? Chiropractors there Saturday night before the game, massage therapists there Sunday before the game, getting an IV on Sunday. Like, these are the things that people don't see that I learned just as a sponge, as a young rook, seeing how you go about the regiment of an NFL week. That's what Fernando is going to see when the Raiders draft him.
So I didn't think about that side of things. Behind the scenes, we don't talk about the chiropractor showing up to practice so you can, get work on, or the massage therapist getting the work in, or when to get your IV. We don't think about any of that stuff. I have to be the first to admit, I didn't think of any of that until I heard, Kirk Morrison break that down and mention that on my radio show. And I even asked him, like, who was it that you learned from, or was it a multiple amount of guys, or just whoever was around you? And he was like, well, I was blessed. I had so many talented players around me, from Charles Woodson to Randy Moss to Warren Sapp and others greats that had long careers that end up with gold jackets. So he was able to just kind of soak that up and be the sponge and understand what they were doing and what he needed to do to be a pro. And so that's something that, Fernando Mendoza is going to be able to do now with Kirk Cousins in front of him, where it's not up to Cousins to be the teacher. It's not up to Cousins to be the coach, right? It's not any of that. But Fernando will be smart enough to say, hey, how do I be an NFL pro? How do I be an NFL quarterback and be a pro? Let me watch the guy that's been here now 15 seasons, as that statement that the Raiders put out, as that mentioned. So really good stuff. There's also, if you want to learn some more about Kirk Cousins, he actually sat down with Amber Thea Harris, Raiders.com. I do encourage you to go check that out, just so you can hear what he, is bringing to the table, him talking about the offense, and really how he's talking about it sounding like his offense, right? Because, again, he's very familiar with Clint Kubiak and what he brings to the table, and not to mention his time with Washington, basically the same type of offense that he was in as well. So he's going back. Another thing that Kirk Morrison pointed out to me, he's going back to understanding the language, going back to a system that he's familiar with, as opposed to what he was learning in Atlanta that was totally different. He actually now goes back to something that he's familiar with, the terminology, and it'll make everything a lot easier for him. The Raiders also re-signed center Will Putnam to the exclusive rights deal. Not a big surprise. Expected him to sign him. He's obviously going to be more depth along that offensive line. And remember, the Raiders are building a roster of 90 right now, and eventually it'll get whittled down to 53. But right now they're worried about the best 90-man roster. I don't think it's any surprise that Fernando Mendoza is coming in for a visit today, especially since the Raiders' offseason workout program begins today. So remember, it's just phase one, so it's not a whole lot that they're doing out there. It's 2 weeks of the program, limited to meetings, strength and conditioning, physical rehab only. Clint Kubiak's going to be speaking to the team. I'm sure he's going to get an opportunity to give them what the identity of the team is, his expectations of the team, how they're going to build this and put it in the right place. Anyone with the contract is probably expected to be there. I'm not saying that it's required that they're all there, but the anticipation is that most of the guys, if not everybody, will be in attendance. And again, it'll be Clint Kubiak's first opportunity to speak in front of the team in general. Obviously, not the players that are going to be drafted at the end of April, except for Fernando Mendoza, who's conveniently going to be there and visiting on today as well. So again, I don't think that that's a coincidence. I think the Raiders timed it out pretty perfectly. He'll get familiar with the building, get acclimated to some of the players around the building, and it just starts the process of Fernando Mendoza being a Raiders quarterback moving forward. But Kirk Cousins, the deal that I had talked about, that I said it wasn't official until it was official, is now official like a referee's whistle.
The tournament is here, one of the best times of the year. Brackets, buzzer beaters, upsets, it's non-stop action from tip to final cutdown. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a way to stay in the action all tournament long. Here's how it works. You can get up to $300 back in bonus bets every single day for 10 days. That means 10 chances to stay involved throughout the entire tournament. You can mix it up however you want. Games, futures, or same-game parlays for even bigger payouts. It's perfect for the tournament because every day there's something new. Different matchups, new storylines, and more ways to get involved as the bracket unfolds. So visit FanDuel.com to sign up today. That's FanDuel.com to get in on the action. Welcome back to the Big 3 and 30 NFL. In Baltimore, Lamar Jackson showed up for workouts. It's an early sign of buy-in as the Ravens get rolling this offseason. Here's Kevin Ostreicher from Locked On Ravens with the full reaction.
Lamar Jackson's arrival at the Ravens facility, it had Dan Orlovsky eating his words from literally less than 10 minutes before the Ravens announced Lamar was there. So we'll talk about that in the first part of the show. Just craziness with Lamar. And again, I feel like the national media was just kind of licking their chops for Lamar to not be there. They had set it up all week. Oh, if Lamar's not there, we're going to have to talk about it. No, he needs to be there. And all this. And again, as I talked about on yesterday's show and on, even just like Locked On Ravens PM yesterday in the squad show, this was not just a Lamar Jackson thing, right? The veteran leaders who ended up showing up, right? Lamar, Derrick Henry, Roquan Smith, Marlon Humphrey, like all these guys. You have good players, elite players on your roster that are not Lamar Jackson. And I think that, again, when Lamar's the quarterback, he's the star. I understand that. Like, he is the brightest star on your team. But again, like Kyle Hamilton's another one. Like, all these guys, they showed up as well. So shout out to them. There was a big tone set and a message sent, and it was great. But there was some controversy in this whole thing as well, where, again, Lamar shows up, he silences his haters. It's great. But there were different angles that some of these, I guess you can call them media haters, national media haters, took. And it was very interesting. So we'll start with Dan Orlovsky. Dan Orlovsky was on Get Up on ESPN, and they were asking quarterback questions. And this was before Lamar, the video was posted and all that. And this was at 8:18 a.m. Dan Orlovsky said, quote, "I'm not going to overreact to him not being there. Maybe he gets there in the next day or two, but it certainly sounds like that's not going to be the case." And then talked a little bit about Lamar's season last year, the situation with Baltimore this year, it being a new era with the Ravens, et cetera, et cetera. And then Dan Orlovsky said, quote, "I'm not going to react to him not being there because we'll give him some time, but I want him there." So this sounds like Dan Orlovsky knows that Lamar's not going to be there, and he has some like information on it. Again, this at 8:18 a.m. Then at 8:24 a.m., the Ravens post a video of Lamar Jackson walking into the facility. Not even 10 minutes later, Lamar Jackson is shown walking into the facility, and that's that. Like, Lamar literally made Dan Orlovsky eat his words. It's just unbelievable. Again, I don't understand what in the world is going on here with Dan Orlovsky. It's a horrible look, first of all. I mean, I tried to like rack my brain for ways where I'm like, what was Dan Orlovsky trying to do here where it wasn't him trying to put this out without any sourcing or information? I don't know. Maybe he just needs better sources. I don't know if he was sourcing it. The only way that I ended up coming up with is to like what the thought process was here that didn't involve something like that is if Dan was going off of all the national conversation and there was no sources or whatever involved. But either way, like, it's irresponsible here, in my opinion, because again, it's another narrative that is being formed. And it's something where like, you can't just wait until like there's something out there about whether Lamar showed up or not. You just have to put out there that, oh, well, certainly sounds like he's not going to be out there. It's not going to be the case. And then boom, 6 minutes later, he's shown walking into the facility. I mean, this is generally, and we'll get into like the life of Lamar Jackson in the second part of the show with the whole Mike Florio situation as well. But this is like typical, right? This is something that we're used to with Lamar Jackson. And I just don't understand the benefit in doing this if you're Dan Orlovsky, where it just felt like he had a pre-planned agenda here. I mean, that's what it feels like, right? Maybe he did, maybe he didn't, but like with all the stuff with the Josh Allen and all that stuff. And it's sad because Dan used to be like a very like ride or die guy for Lamar, and it feels like forever ago, but like he would consistently praise Lamar for a time. And then obviously like the MVP stuff came and the Josh Allen stuff came, and that all kind of came by the wayside. Dan has obviously come on multiple times since that whole stuff with the Allen and the MVP stuff and said he loves Lamar, this, that, and the other, which again, he ended up having to eat his own words because they brought Dan Orlovsky back on after this. And Dan was kind of just like, hey, I love that Lamar is there. This is the second iteration of Lamar. All this stuff, it's new, the face of the franchise. I think it matters. But that's what it should have been in the first place, right? There should have been no, oh, well, it sounds like he's not going to be there. It should have just been, hey, maybe we can wait a little bit to figure out whether he's going to be there or not, and then do something on it. So I don't know. It's a very weird situation to me. And honestly, you want to know who comes out looking the best? Is Lamar, right? Again, it feels like Dan Orlovsky and these people are just waiting to jump on Lamar. Ooh, he's not there. Oh, let's get into this. Oh, hey, we're going to just throw Lamar to the wolves here. But again, he shows up and makes Dan Orlovsky eat his words. Dan Orlovsky looks horrible in this situation, right? He looks terrible. And Lamar comes out on top. Lamar wins. Like, he wins again here, right? There was that interaction with Lamar and Orlovsky, what was it, a couple weeks ago, where Lamar responded to what Dan Orlovsky had to say, and Dan was like, you're right, Lamar, you're right, or something along those lines. Lamar wins again, right? It's this weird thing where this is just like basic, in my opinion, of like, can we not just, I'm not sure, again, I doubt that Dan Orlovsky and ESPN or whatever knew that 6 minutes later there was going to be a video of Lamar out there, but we know the Ravens start their workouts today, right? We know that there's going to be some iteration. If Lamar's not in a video, you can make an assumption maybe, but that's still probably not smart. So like, why even risk it? And again, I truly believe this because there is some agenda being pushed. It's not just Orlovsky, by the way, but I mean, we've seen it. And again, Orlovsky's lost a lot of credibility here with this. Obviously, the Mendoza and Ty Simpson thing got put on a very national stage where he questioned what big games Fernando Mendoza had won on Pat McAfee and got grilled on it and fried on it by McAfee and crew. And did we not just watch Mendoza win the national championship 3 months ago or however long it was? Like, that's ridiculous. And then even the stuff with Lamar and Allen was on like more of like Ravens and Bills fans timelines, where like obviously Bills fans are getting all the love from Dan Orlovsky and now it's Josh Allen, and then Lamar and the Ravens fans where Dan Orlovsky was pushing it down. But I think this incident got on everybody's radar, and it just, again, this is typical for Lamar Jackson. So I'm glad that Lamar was there. I'm glad that Dan Orlovsky had to eat his words here. It was a bad look. And, it's just unfortunate because this is kind of what Dan Orlovsky is known for now, particularly in Baltimore. When he does breakdowns, I think he's very insightful with them. I think he has very good football knowledge. Like, that stuff is there. But it's this kind of stuff where it's just like, you talk about like purple colored glasses. Like, he has the opposite. It's like negative Lamar glasses. Like, can we just take that off for a second? And, there are moments where he'll praise Lamar and say this and that, but you can't just like say all these like little good things about Lamar or say this and then like expect to just get a pass when you say this type of stuff or put these type of narratives out there. Like, oh no, but I said I loved Lamar on March 17th at 2:32 p.m. No, like, that doesn't matter when you're putting out narratives that are, even if it's not meant to be intentional, the narrative of, oh, hey, he's not going to show up, is looking like he's not going to show up. Like, what type of message does that send when you don't have the information? So this shouldn't have even been a story in the first place. Like, I don't even know why this is like such a big deal about it, where, hey, has Lamar shown up to every like OTA or workout or, voluntary thing the Ravens have ever had? No. Has he forfeited workout bonuses? Yeah. But at the end of the day, like, we can talk about how, if Lamar's not there or he hasn't been there. We've talked about it on the show. Yes, disappointing, but it is his decision. So I'm not going to bash him out there if he's not, and he was obviously, but even when he hasn't been, I haven't been like, Lamar, this terrible leader. No, I mean, it's disappointing, but it's his decision. I think that's very rational. It just feels like in the situation with Lamar, it just goes so far in the negative direction. And again, the reason we talk about these things here on the show is because I'm not going to let it slide. Right? I'm not just going to say, oh, hey, Dan Orlovsky tried to start a narrative before knowing anything. And again, it's not just an Orlovsky thing either. Like, I'm not trying to single him out, but this particular segment is about Orlovsky. We'll get to Mike Florio in the second part of the show. But it's like, this happens all the time with national media. And then again, like, you don't hear, and I'm not using like this particular situation, I'm just talking in general. You don't hear the same stuff for Burrow or Allen or any of these other guys. And again, like, Mahomes has the championship thing, all that stuff. I get it. But for guys who are either in the same boat, who don't have a ring like Lamar, who haven't made the Super Bowl, et cetera, and I know Burrow has, but like, those are guys who are also chasing a championship. And, again, with workouts and OTAs, that's a conversation in its own, but I'm talking very generally. It's just is what it is with Lamar. And it's unfortunate, but it's stuff Lamar has dealt with, for his entire pro career, college, like, dating back however far you want to. But you know what? Hey, he showed up at workouts and he wins in this case.
That's all for today's Big 3 in 30 NFL. If you follow basketball or college sports, the Big 3 in 30 has shows for the biggest news in the NBA and on campus going up every week just like this one. Just search the Big 3 in 30 NBA or the Big 3 in 30 College wherever you're listening or watching now. Thanks again for tuning in to the Big 3 in 30 NFL.